So if any of you are curious about that, you can ask about that later. Anyway, my name is Maher, and I'm the Vineyard Manager for Harlan Estate, and we have some other ranches as well, and then we have Bond Estates, which we contract through about 6 growers that we work with. And actually, it was an exciting week for me this week. I just got back, one, mostly because I just went fly fishing and biking for a week, but 2, coming back and seeing how the grapes had gone through veraison already. So that was kind of exciting to see that change. And this morning I was down at Napa Valley Ag picking up some materials, and a bunch of vineyard managers down there, and kind of realizing, sort of thinking about today a little bit about what we do, and realizing, it's what we do. We talk about weather, how no season's ever normal anymore, and we're worriers. I mean, I think that's part of our job being a farmer. You tend to worry about things and always want to sort of look at, avoiding any kind of catastrophes and all. So it's just kind of interesting thinking about that because weather is a topic, whether the weather's good or not. We're always talking about the weather, what we're doing. But this year, looking at it, we came into this year and it kind of reminded a lot of us of 1991 and 1998. I mean, they're not too far in the rearview mirror for a lot of us. That were very cool seasons that we were growing in. And this started out that way for us, very similar. And so thinking about the wines of those years and how there are really some outstanding wines of those years, and how, say, 1998 has really been one of those sleepers that has come to be an amazing vintage for a lot of people, we thought about how we were going to approach this vineyard, or this vintage at Harlan Estate. And 1998 was a low crop year, and thinning didn't really happen a lot that year because, it was already low. But there's also diversity in it. And so thinking about that, thinking about 1991, which was a sort of an average size crop year, kind of how we would approach this year and what kind of risks we would take in it. We set a fairly good crop this year in general. It wasn't a huge crop, but it was a nice sized crop on average. Sunburn, as all know, we've had to deal with sunburn over the years, and have sort of worked our canopies in order to manage that. But this year we all sort of felt that it's sort of worth taking a risk on sunburn and maybe opening up our canopies really early this year. So that's how we sort of approached it. Not just us, a lot of people did that as well, that we would maybe go ahead, open up our canopies right after bloom and set, help minimize sort of any green flavorings in the crop that if it was going to be a cool year, knowing that, we well could have August be warm, September and October be warm, and maybe dealing with a little bit of sunburn or not. So we did that. We opened up our canopies, especially on some of our later blocks, blocks that have a little more maybe green flavoring, just to help minimize that flavoring in the wines later on. And then we also looked at crop levels this year as well. Doing our cluster counts, crop size, as Dave had mentioned, the clusters this year, thinking it would be a big cluster year after 2005, having such a wet spring. We haven't been seeing that. We've been seeing sort of elongated, loose clusters. So looking at that, we've also actually brought our crops down a little bit this year just to hedge on it being a late harvest as well. And seeing that throughout the valley a little bit. People don't want to really take the risk of hanging crop out too late this year. So, we've kind of looked at our window of thinning of not bringing it down huge, but bringing it down to a level on the lower part of the window that we're comfortable with to order to ensure, ripeness. Hopefully in October is what we're looking at. But we're, seeing veraison this week. In most our lower vineyards, as far as in Oakville area, St. Helena, and Rutherford, it kind of gave a little more confidence to what's going on this year. We've had 2 weeks of weather that have been pretty optimal for things to color up. The wood on the vine is ripening. And we're looking at veraison not being, it's behind last year, definitely, say 7 to 10 days. But, I look at 08, 07, 06, 2, 01, similar dates of veraison. And so that, I think, is giving us a little more comfort level. As Dave mentioned, we may have somewhat of a compressed harvest, though, that could be an issue of where we pick at night and at day. But I think people are looking at mitigating things this year, of getting into the season early. As I mentioned, opening up canopies for mildew control. He had talked about it being a cool year. So kind of keeping airflow to minimize disease pressure. Crop levels thinning early also to sort of keep things open. We've been on a tight spray program this year. It's just this kind of weather, foggy mornings, mild temperatures, it's optimal for mildew pressure. There's another thing that we've all sort of been dealing with this year too, is the European grapevine moth. It's something that came on the scene in 2008, kind of set itself here in 2009, no one really knowing, and now, 2010, there's been a coordinated effort to control it. The Napa Valley grape growers, and with the county ag commissioner Dave Whitmer, and the California Department of Food and Ag, have made a real concert, effort in order for control of the season. And so we've really had a huge support from our ag commissioner and the Napa Valley grape growers in coordination of the life cycle of this pest, timing of spraying, timing of putting out pheromone lures in order to disruption traps. We've had options. They've given us options to treat it organically or sustainably. So it's really been I think it's helped a lot of us. It was quite a fear at the beginning of the season how this was going to affect a lot of us. And, the first traps that they set out had huge, collection of the moths in the traps. Where the second flight or the second generation was substantially lower, and now the third generation starting, which you're seeing very little in the flights as well. So, I think we feel very fortunate as vineyard managers that we've had that kind of support and concert effort on a pest that we've never dealt with before. And so, they've been dealing with it in South America, they've been dealing with France and Italy, and so there's sort of comfort in knowing that this is a pest that we can work with it and control. So that was sort of a unknown for all of us this year too. But in general, we're looking at, as David mentioned, kind of crops of average size this year. We're not looking at a low crop of maybe 2007, but or 99 or 98, but an average size that we're actually able to thin down to as well. That's all I have to say about that right now. So any other questions, you can talk to me later on as well.